some slides, of course. I mean, just very minimal, because I just don't want to put you in too much of wordings and textings, but really focusing on the content. For those of you who know me, that's my pleasure to host you on my very first webinar. Tura, John, Carolina, Alex, Marta, Kani, Ariana, Eric, everybody, hi and welcome. I'm very happy that this is now happening. So this is the first time. And as you know, Ewen Tavakoli is my name, lawyer, business advisor, speaker, and trainer. I help smaller business owners get their acts together. Let's say it in slang. I help them get proper contracts and legal documents. You know, I still do not have an assistant, so I have to do all the work myself. I provide them right contracts, legal advices, risk mitigation strategies, and out-of-court dispute resolution methods and tools, so that once there's a conflict or something, they can still resolve it amicably with efficiency, without having the high costs and time and energy consuming proceedings and trials with public courts. And of course, contracts are like the best insurance or the best medicine for also conflict prevention. So therefore today, I'm also focusing on these two aspects, because in the current situation, we are now heading towards or just into a very deep, savage crisis, so that nobody actually expected something like this is going to happen, especially not in Switzerland, not in Europe. I mean, we always think this is the safe haven, neutral, peaceful, stable, nothing is going to happen here, but normally it hits us when we least expect it. Can you maybe shortly, guys, tell me if how are you doing throughout these quarantines or the shutdown times, personally, business-wise? If you just could share a few words, or how is it? Today is the third week, actually, officially in Switzerland. How have you been handling this? How is your business doing? Did you already face challenges, which I assume yes, but I would like to see it also from your side. And if you can just drop me a few points or words, so that I know also how I navigate the presentation. Of course. Okay. What kind of? Maybe just drop a few. That's no problem. That's no problem, because even if you don't have a business, I mean, if some of the members are writing that they still do not have a business, but first of all, this is a great preparation, and it's not only about having the business right now, but also as an individual. Sometimes you cannot just deliver. Maybe you have to write your PhD, but you can't deliver on time, or you can't be present somewhere, or you're an employee, but you can't fulfill. And I love how Ivan is thinking. That's the sailor mentality. You're preparing for post-corona period. That's also actually my intention, by providing some preparation techniques and tactics, how you can, first of all, go through this current crisis with least damages and losses, and how, of course, we can get prepared for the future ones. This is not going to be the last one. I mean, in this type, this is not the first one, right? But yeah, payment agreements, actually the financials are always the number one that they kick in. People fail to pay, or banks have problem also with loans, etc., or clients are not paying on time, or they don't want to pay because some of them, they are complaining that the services are not being delivered the way they should be. And some people are not able to deliver the services as well. So we have delivery failures in payment, I mean, financial, or as service or products. I mean, I think it was Kani as mentioned to me once, as she dropped in the Facebook page with regards to supply chain problems, especially for product businesses. And that is actually a big challenge as well, because supply chain is really now in a big trouble. these days. They are all, connected to each other. If you want to deliver your product to your client, no matter how prepared and how in a good shape you are, but once your supply chain partner is not in the same good shape as you, or is from the other country which is affected differently than you, then you can't deliver as well. So that's why it's called also supply chain. So it's all connected. Lucas, what kind of questions do your clients have? Maybe you can drop one and then I just shoot. I'm happy actually that you could join. Maybe just give me one example. Okay, let's get through this. Well, we want to make the best out of time. I'm happy that now quite some people joined us. I welcome you again. Also, those who just joined us in the last few seconds. Thank you so much for being here. So, and I see most of the people know me already. That's a great start for me as well. And we all know also what we're going to talk about. So I just give you a very short framework, how we are going to move forward. I'm going to go through, first of all, a little analysis or a definition of the current situation. So what are the challenges? Why are we here where we are? And how we can handle it, not only business-wise, but also legally. Because most of the times now, during such challenging times, people start getting into conflicts, or they do not deliver, or they fail to fulfill their contractual obligations if they have one. If they don't have, it's even worse, because then we will have like burden of proof and evidence issues, and then the issue gets deeper and deeper. But the earlier we intervene and try to find solutions, the higher the chances are that we get to a settlement or agreement. So first, we were going through quickly the situation. What does it mean for us? What does it mean for business? What is that legally? How are different countries and globally are they handling this? How are they facing it? And then we'll go through a few cases or examples, and then what are the solutions? What are the good tactics and measures for most of you who are non-lawyers, but you are business owners, or maybe partner in a business with someone, or you are a client of someone, or you are an employee somewhere, or maybe you're a tenant, or renting a place. So there are many different constellations, and actually everybody is somehow affected. Well, with regards to Netherlands, yeah, that's the problem. Switzerland was feeling the same. They did not believe it as well. Hi, Vatni, how are you? Arsha, you finally made it. Thank you for being here. We're just getting actually started, so you're on time. The concern with regards to the second part of the year, yes, actually, you're very right, Kani, because the setbacks will actually appear later. We are just now getting into this. People still think it's a kind of holiday. I mean, the past 2 weeks, sometimes when I wanted to go out for something very urgent, I was seeing like families or kids are on the playground and they are making barbecues. And I was just thinking, hello, this is a shutdown. It's not a holiday. They mixed up something. So here also, it took them some time. I don't know if in other cities they have taken it seriously or not, but I think Zurich is now handling it pretty seriously. So with regards to the outcomes and the consequences, we will have a crazy, like a storm, like a flood of consequences. And I don't want to go into the financial aspects, what will happen with the full financial sector in the world, but there will be a big chaos. There is already, but the consequences will appear later. So let's get into this. And at the end of this, anytime if you have questions or so, please just list them in the chat, because as I told you, I'm also pretty new to this and I don't have an assistant or something here, so I will have to see all of them myself. And then at the end, we will put a reserve a certain time so that we go through your questions, and then I will also inform you what I'm going to offer afterwards, or if you want to be a part of this or not. Absolutely. Freedom of choice, absolutely no problem for anyone who is interested to go further. But let's now go here. So the question is, how do I get money as an owner of? Oh, that's actually your a little bit of your area as well. with regards to the employments, etc. This is not actually what we may want to focus on today, because that's a very, very specific topic. We're going rather today in the area of how we can interpret and how we can save ourselves, especially with other contractual parties, out of the circumstances. So let's get this started. So maybe now you see me a little small. It's also no problem, because you know me already, and now you have seen me as well. So we want to actually make a health check as well for all the businesses and see, okay, where are you at this moment? What do you have? What are you lacking? And with that, what you have in hand or as assets with your businesses as a backup, how can you move forward? So in a way that you can actually protect your business in the best way possible. For this, first, as I said, we just look at the current situation, and I don't have to really emphasize it all, because we see that the situation is now in a kind of like world standstill. I mean, with all this little notice, the whole pandemic made it now. The public events have been stopped, schools and stores have been closed, financial markets are in kind of tailspin, and people are staying at home, those who are behaving, of course, but not everybody. So where coronavirus now caused kind of like business disruption, from fulfillment of deliveries to cancellation of events, a common question is whether commercial parties or business parties in a contract, or just handshake business parties, can rely on force majeure clauses in their contracts or not. And what is force majeure? Are we now in a force majeure or not? Who is deciding whether we are in a force majeure situation or not? And how this situation can be defined also in the daily communications and in the daily business interactions. Because as we know now, actually, the whole spreading of the virus is now into Europe, trying to also impact on both human resources and the commercial relationships with operations in the most affected regions. But the impact of this epidemic nowadays, although most of you may not really expect this, but it's greater also in Switzerland, as a lot of Swiss companies have also traditionally built strong relationships with Asia. And as we know, the source of all this infection and issue started from where? From China. So we look at the situation right now. So first of all, I want to know from each one of you, you can just say yes, no in the chat box, whether in a situation like this, did you have something to refer to? Do you have a solid contract that if now somebody's asking for money or somebody's asking for extra service, do you have something to refer to or not? Do you have a written contract or not? You can just type yes or no, that's fine. Yes, Vadim, this question we will also discuss later on. There are packages. Alexandra, yes. Eric, no. Kani, yes. Okay, that's great. The yeses are great. The no's are half great, but there are solutions. That's why also we are here, because if everybody is super well equipped, then we shouldn't be gathering now together. Okay, so for those of you who have a contract, it means actually you were one step ahead and you were thinking or looking at protection of your business also by means of legal documents. That's already very important, but not every contract is a contract, because there are like a few groups of people that I always like put them into certain categories. There are those who say, I'm fine the way I have been doing business by now. It has been working all the time like this, and that's fine. So I don't have one, and I think I'm going to continue like this. There's the second group that they say, well, actually, I know that I need it, or I know that it would be better if I have contracts, but I think it will never happen to me. So yeah. Or the other ones, they may say, lawyers are expensive, contracts are complex, and that's why, you know what, I'm not looking for headaches. So I continue the way my business is. And actually the first and the second groups are still to have some mercy on, but the third groups are really to those who we have to really pull their ears, because depending on whom you go, what advisor you go, and what kind of documents you try to implement and execute into your businesses, you can keep everything also affordable and understandable and accessible. So that is actually one very important point that we have to keep an eye on. Just not getting out of a certain amount of little investment, trying to save money, but then getting into bigger problems. That's what we may be challenging with a lot of people, that they have thought, this will never happen to me. But now I think nobody can challenge it anymore. We are in the midst of a global crisis. People cannot deliver, people can't go to work, even if they can. Some of them, they are not allowed. People with smaller businesses like bars, restaurants, hotels, I mean, some few like 5-star hotels are already closed, and they announced that they are closed until end of spring already. So this means like millions, or partly, if you will look at it in a bigger scale, it means billions of losses, actually also in tourism industry. Especially if you have a contract. Now I want one other answer from you guys. Does it have a force majeure clause? I will then talk about it. What is that, and why is it important to have it? Yes, Alexandra, that's actually what we are looking at now, especially with the clause that it's going to. So Vadim says, yes, that's amazing. Yes to the contract, or yes to the force majeure clause? Okay, so you say yes. Okay, that's amazing, because having a clause is also something, and how this clause is set, or how precise is the wordings, and also legally seen and interpreted, that is also another thing. So now we have the answers, like partly say yes, partly say no, and then now we want to really deep dive in it and see what is a force majeure. I mean, those of you who are in the French-speaking area of Switzerland, heads up. Natural disaster, yeah, yes, among others, yes. One is natural disaster, but at the moment, actually, we are not facing a natural disaster. A natural disaster could be an earthquake, or a volcano, or flood, fire, bushfire, for example. But now we are facing something else, right? So those in the French-speaking areas, just drop some words. I mean, the term is French, actually. Well, if we want to look at it just also professionally, and from just the definition of word as a term, major strength, yes, it is actually, let's call it the superior force. The superior force, it means a circumstance or a situation that was neither foreseeable or predictable, nor controllable. So an unforeseen, uncontrollable circumstance that happens, and we can't do really anything about it. Superior force, exactly. It's a major, absolutely. Because the strength is something that we can influence something by it, but the force is something that is hard to resist it. So if you're sick, of example, and can't deliver, yes, for example, no. Sickness is not force majeure. No. We are talking about a superior force, like earthquake, like pandemic. For example, right now we have a global pandemic. If you're sick and you can't go to work, it is a default. It is a problem for one person. But force majeure is a situation. Normally, when you're sick, you can't control the situation. You can stay home, you can go buy medicine, you can go to doctor or something. But in a force majeure situation, you as a human have literally no control over it. For example, let's say you are supplying oil in a big vessel in Indian Ocean towards another country or another continent. Then the ship sinks for whatever reasons, which has nothing to do with human. Exactly, Turajdan, that's right. So for some reason that has nothing to do with the strength or with the control of the human, and then the ship sinks or the plane crashes. So this is something that, unless the pilot or the captain were responsible for that. Otherwise, nobody can be really held responsible for that. Because as Alexandra also wanted to know, what we also want to look at it today is, if something like this, like today, like the current situation is happening, who is responsible? What are the outcomes? Who has to stand for what, and what are the roles and obligations of each party in the contract or even out of a contract? Because even if you do not have a contract, you still can reach out and communicate, or bring the whole issue to a court of law, which is actually always my last resort. Because in these kind of situations, as if you may be informed also, especially now in Switzerland, the courts are also closed now for the next few days. So the force majeure, as we said, it is a circumstance that is out of your control and out of your expectation or prediction. But what are they normally, what does it normally conclude? So this was now the definition that we already delivered. Most important components of force majeure are the non-predictability and the non-controllability. So it means you can't have anticipated that already, and once it is happening or before it happens, you couldn't have controlled it. And once it is there, then still the situation is out of your control because it goes on a higher power. Like, for example, the current situation that we are now, the governments are making decisions about further measures or what is going to happen. Are they like being shutdowns, certain measure with social distancing, like trying to provide financial aids for business owners or for the tenants or for the banks, for the employers, and so on and so forth. So it is very important to first understand what is the situation that we are at now, and then we have to understand why it is important, because we just mentioned it is essential to know what are the outcomes and the consequences of such circumstances. If you cannot deliver, so what? So whom can you go to? Whom can you hold reliable? And what the other party can invoke, and what kind of clauses you can call on. Because at the moment, if we see, if you are not able to deliver, for example, Kani, as far as I remember, you are in shoe business or something. So if you can't deliver, your client may come and ask you or hold you reliable or ask you for the delivery. But on the other hand, you can say, but my supplier is delayed. I don't have the shoes. What can I deliver to you? So you see, this is important to know what are the components and why is it so often overlooked. At the beginning, as I mentioned, especially for us based in Europe or especially in Switzerland, the problem is Europe has not really faced a major crisis. I mean, I'm talking about especially this part of Europe, not really major crisis since the Second World War. So maybe that's one of the reasons that now everybody's going to buy toilet papers, because I don't know, maybe they think they can have no water or no sanitary services or something. So that's a really sometimes funny and sad illusion and the expectation of people. But on the other hand, what we have to see is that people have become too comfortable after the years of the finishing of the war, and then the rebuilding and reconstruction. Everything has become somehow stable, and especially in a country like Switzerland with legal, financial, political stability, you feel like you're no more vulnerable. Nothing can happen here. Until 3-4 weeks ago, still people were like super non-believers. And also in other countries, for example, let's say in Eastern countries or in Oriental countries, there's a lot of agreements or contracts are based on handshakes or trust. And there, people may think also this person will never betray me, will never do something behind my back. We just shook hands, you know. But as we know, it's not now only the corona which is forbidding handshakes, but now we are also looking at the black sides of a handshake in business agreements. Because it can never give you the conformity, the prevention, the transparency, and also the proof of evidence that you may need once you are no more in that state of agreement with your counterparty, but you start having indifferences and conflicts. So the reason is, first of all, that why we overlook it, because first of all, we think this is not going to happen to us, or this is not going to happen here. So therefore, why are we going to include something like that in a contract? The second reason is that most people, especially contracting parties, if they are not being consulted or advised by experts, they are not aware of something like that. They don't know that they can include something like that actually legally binding in an agreement, and that afterwards they can actually invoke and be exempted or excused or excluded from certain delivery of services or products. This is one main reason, is the lack of knowledge or the lack of awareness. A lot of people, they just don't know that such a clause exists. Third reason is that may be advised or consulted by the wrong experts or lawyers, or by known lawyers, for example. That's also one very big issue. So that you get your contracts from, I don't know, like internet or like not reliable sources, or you get it copy pasted from your friends or colleagues because they wanted to be kind to you and they just gave you something, and then you just did not review it or have it reviewed by an expert. So these are like some of the reasons that why this very important clause is actually not included in thousands of 10,000s of contracts in the world. For me, myself, I am, thank God, very, very proud that all the contracts that I have been providing for my clients by now, they were including force majeure clause, and to be specific, a very precise and solid one. I have probably personal reasons for that, because I've been hit also once by something like that. And secondly is that I'm a child of revolution, wars, kidnapping, suppression, inflation, sanctions, embargoes. So I come from the country of crisis. So for us, it is not that we say, no, something like this will never happen to us. It is like we are used to it. And on the other hand, getting into the legal sector, I understood that it's a part of the responsibility to not always carry those crises or those adversities that I'm carrying from the past or even from the present of my hometown with me as a kind of issue or problem or a setback, but as a fuel or as a drive to bring all of those experiences and all of those setbacks and problems, actually now making it to a power and to a recipe to deliver it to others who are trusting me and who are asking me for a review or for a consulting, etc. So in that case, I'm really happy that last week I got actually a very funny phone call. She was screaming. I have a client from Austria. Maybe some of you know her. And she even made a post on Facebook, and she called me and she was screaming, Avi. I thought, oh my God, what happened to her now? Sorry, she's in shit and now she needs help, but probably I told her some stuff and she did not listen. But then she said, I am so grateful. I said, yeah, that's fine, but you're screaming, so I'm actually afraid that something has happened to you. You said, you put a clause in my terms and conditions and in my other consulting contracts with corporates especially that has something in it that now that they are asking me for delivering a service. And if I'm saying that in this situation, I'm not able or I'm not allowed to deliver the service actually because of the governmental measures as well, they didn't want to pay me. But now I looked at my contract and I referred to that clause, and actually they're obliged to pay me that, because I am not able to deliver the service, not because of my reasons, but because of objective reasons. So that is what we are also going after now into it. What are the differences between those defaults, as Alexandra just mentioned, if you just get sick or something, or if something is really blocking you from delivering your services. This is actually now what we have been already through. So this we have to really give up, because now we are in the middle of crisis. And if you want to stick to those kind of attitudes like, no, this is fine, this never happens to us, it is always good to be prepared. We hear that also always from our coaches, that they always say, think ahead, plan ahead, be 8 moves or 15 moves ahead of your competitors or ahead of your market and ahead of your circumstances. Because the moment we think this cannot happen, the best, what I also mentioned in one of my posts is that once you are well prepared, no enemy can be strong enough to beat you. So during these times of crisis, actually, we have now the opportunity to get a little bit deeper into ourselves, into our businesses, look at our old documents, look whether we have contracts. If we have, look at them and to evaluate them or have them reviewed and see how can we survive this in a way that we can afterwards step into the market, not only as just survivors, but also as thrivers, so that we have become stronger throughout this crisis. Because as I said, also, we should not consider this as a holiday. It is not something, a situation that we have to sit back and watch Netflix. It is exactly a situation that maybe financially we will, of course, we all will go through some challenges that belongs to crisis times. But depending on how you manage your business for the next crisis, then you won't even go into a financial crisis. You will even make some gains and some wins. So this is something that probably, this is not exactly the legal thing, but this is the human side that helps also mitigate legal and financial risks, to give up with that attitude that I'm fine, I'm safe, nothing will happen to me. It's exactly like you do not close an insurance because you think, I will never get sick. Or you don't really get your cars with winter tires because say, I'm a good driver, nothing will happen to me. So this attitude, actually, we have to get rid of. Now, for those of you who said you have contracts, no problem for those who don't, because we all learn something from this. The first thing, especially in this amazing country that we are in, and also in most of other jurisdictions in the world, when a conflict arises between two people, not necessarily business parties, it can be also the employee and employer, it can be husband and wife. The first thing that a judge or a court of law or an arbitrator or mediator want to see, they first ask, do you have a contract? Do you have something in writing between you? So that is actually giving us, people, as individuals or as representative of our entities, our companies, it gives us this autonomy or this authority to define or to already prepare our own game, to define our own game with the strategy to win it by putting everything on paper from the very beginning. No matter what kind of people are we dealing with, whether they are our clients or third parties, such as suppliers, service providers, investors, or business partners. That is actually one of the most important parts, because at the very beginning of every business, there is trust. At the beginning of every clientele relationship, there is trust. At the beginning of every partnership, private or business, there is a trust. But how can we maintain that trust? By putting it into wordings, into something on paper, into something solid, that once there is a risk, or there's a little indifference, it shouldn't always escalate, that we can still have something to refer to. That is something which can prevent us from further escalations, because we see what we have agreed on, what we have signed, and what we have already in place. So the first thing that at a court of law, or as a private court, that I call it a private court arbitrator, so they first ask you whether you have a contract or not. That is the amazing things, because it gives you the power before anything happens, that you have something on paper, and that is called also in Switzerland Grundsatz der Vertragsfreiheit, which is the principle of freedom of contract. So it means as long as you are not opposing or violating a certain major principle of law, or let's say a principle, like, for example, national security or a public interest, as long as you are not violating those kind of things, you are free to set your contracts the way you want, in the framework that also a legal system is providing to you. Because legal system actually wants you to have contracting freedom, because the more freedom you have and the more contracts exist, the less the judiciary has work, and this means the whole costs and the infrastructures for the judiciary is going to reduce, and the efficiency will arise, because the people or the business partners, they will have, or they have been granted with this freedom, that we are not going to control whatever you do, and we are not defining the game of your business. It is you who defines it. So why not leveraging this freedom? This is actually why I always think contracts are so attractive and so sexy. I don't know why people are really sometimes escape them, or they think these are not good if we are friends with someone, or if we are in a family membership with someone. More than 68%, I think this was the statistic of last year, of the disputes in the courts of law, or the trials, are proven to be happening between family members and those who thought they are good friends. So why shall we jeopardize or risk our friendship or our relationships by not having something solid as a backup? I always say contracts are the best backups for a relationship or the best protection for the relationship, like having a shield or respect that relationship. So as long as you have solid contracts, the judge will also, I'm talking about judge because that's the typical figure when we are talking about disputes or conflicts. So the first thing that people think is rather a judge than a mediator or negotiator or an arbitrator. The judge, let's say, first look at your contract and see whether you have something or not. And if you're lucky, then you will have also force majeure clause for such situation included in your contract. Now we will also talk about how this clause shall look like so that it can serve you with the best protection, actually. The second thing that is very important is, because especially if you don't have a contract, especially for those who type no in the chat box, if you don't have one, it is very important to see what is the choice of law. That if you have a contract, in what kind of jurisdiction or legal system did you refer to in your contract? Or if you don't have, where is the jurisdiction that you or your business partner or your clients are at, so that to see that that legal system will apply, whether that's a legal system that it will be in your favor or not. That is very important, because if you're based in Switzerland, I would never advise my clients to go for another choice of law, because I advise or consult international clients, but I have a lot of clients who are here and have business partnerships or clients in Asia, in America, in Australia, in different countries and jurisdictions. I always tell them, please, I insist that the choice of law for your contracts must be Swiss law. And that is also something, we have this privilege, if we are based in Switzerland and some other neighboring countries, we have this privilege that the legal system here is pretty well respected and recognized by also other international players. So once we have that also in place, that help us to be under a pretty safe legal system. Because there are now, as I will mention to you, some jurisdictions that are not even recognizing the situation now as force majeure. And if they don't recognize, they will not also grant or assure you the protection. And the third part that you have to look at is whether you have given your contracts or whether you have had a right consulting from a competent lawyer or an expert in this field. Because sometimes people may go to me or to somebody else and ask questions, like also now at the very beginning of this chat, especially for employment, etc. There are the areas that probably not really in my areas of expertise, because I work on international contracts and dispute resolutions. I may also have knowledges on those, but I do not give the advice because that's not the area that I feel like I am expert at. So, and an expert is not also authentic if they know everything, because then the definition of expert will become obsolete. Now, for now, we have just within the past few weeks, we have really like devastating results or statements that have been already published or being really now disclosed to the public by studies from very reliable sources. And based on those, some statistics are out which are really scary, at least for myself, as I was really looking at the whole topic, especially last week, seeing those numbers, like how many companies are now have been seeing these impacts on their suppliers. Because we are being assured very often also by media that, yeah, food supply, beverage supply, everything is fine. But what if the suppliers are not able to deliver anymore? What if the tomatoes that we were expect 3 months ago to be delivered from Italy or from Spain cannot be delivered now on time here to Switzerland? Then we will have a shortage of tomato. I'm talking about tomato, especially because as we were little, as I was 3 years old, that was the war between Iran and Iraq. It was a very brutal war. I think, Kani, if I don't know how old you are, but maybe you can tell something about it, or Turaj maybe. During those times, we were not only facing shutdowns or stay home or something, we were really facing shut up measures. Like we were not even allowed to have lights in the nights in our houses because we were afraid of the fighter jets or planes to bomb our houses, because if they were seeing lights, something like that could happen. And tomato I'm talking about because we were displaced for a few months during the war in a village, because the capital city of Tehran was supposed to be bombed. So we were all informed to leave the town, to city, and go to whatever neighboring cities or countrysides, and to stay with other people. So during those times, this is now the luxury that we are experiencing here. We are all sitting in our own homes, and we have things to eat, we have a place to sleep, and there is no bombs or no planes outside. So that was a real force majeure. And then after quite a while, there were food shortages. There were like beverage shortages. There were like children food shortages. So children, like baby milks, like also further food supply for also adult people, they were no more available because the borders were also closed to the neighboring countries. So import export were suffering. And also throughout the whole quarantine, because everybody was leaving the big city to outside, we were staying with other families in the same houses. And there was like, after 1 week, 2 weeks, there was nothing to eat anymore. So then the mothers, they had to like dig in the cellars and look for stuff to find how they can nourish the whole families. There were like 3 families in one house, and people were really like doing acts of solidarity. And those days, I remember the only thing that my mom and my uncle's wife found were like these cherry tomatoes. There were seemingly a big box still in the cellar from I don't know when, and then like 2 big packs of rice. And for I think 1 week long, we were eating rice and tomato for 1 week. And I was, I think, 4-year-old or something. So that is what I'm saying, that we have to be grateful for the privilege that at the moment we have now. This is a shutdown, but it is just a shutdown. It's just to stay home. However, going back to the suppliers and the tomatoes from Italy and Spain, supply chain is toughly affected as well. So it is not only us as service businesses that we cannot run our events, we cannot meet our clients, we cannot, like for example, Monica, we cannot go and to visit new properties or look at new investment opportunities. We can't, I mean, these are like travel and movement bans, everything. But on the other hand, if it comes to the food and beverages, then the real force majeure will happen, because then we all will come down to the first Maslow pyramid tier, and then we will become like animals, because then we will have nothing to eat, and we start like, I don't know, stuff can happen. I don't know, anybody seen the first movie, The Joker, with Heath Ledger? There is a very prominent dialogue as he's, and one scene he's saying, these civilized people, if something emergency, I think, happened to them, they will eat each other like beasts. So I hope that something like this is not happening. But just going back to the suppliers issues, and like throughout last week's, this is just, I mean, all fresh, super recent statistics, that 3 of 10 companies are only expecting to be full operational. This is crazy. And nobody knows how long this crisis is going to continue. This is just the beginning in these countries, especially. China is over it. And the good thing, now I want to repeat this about the jurisdiction and the legal system. China recognized this situation, the global pandemic, as force majeure. This is very important, because if a country or if a jurisdiction system does not recognize it, then we will not get also the legal protection. China recognized it and issued already for thousands of the companies and the manufacturers and production units in China a certificate of exemption, suspension, exclusion, and deletion of the delivery, so that for some of them, they were totally like excused to deliver, and some of them, they were exempted to deliver until, I mean, postponed by the end of the times of the crisis. I would like to have a look at our chat box before I... Kani, I think you're much younger than me, so yeah, you're right that you are not remembering this. Yes, Tourette, that's very right. There are like test stations for force majeure that we have to look at it, how extreme it is. So that's why I told Alexandra it is not just about being sick. It must be something extreme. And of course, as we said, also it must be something which was unforeseen, unpredictable. I wouldn't say irresistible. Irresistible is a bit positive. I mean, irresistible is something nice, but something which is not was not anticipated and it's not possible to control. Now we are coming to two components that can differentiate a force majeure from just a difficult situation. Because the difference between a superior force, something that stops us or prevents us from delivering or performing, that's one thing. And there is another example, there's another circumstance when the delivering or the performance is just difficult or it's just more expensive or more complicated. So I think now, let me know if you understand where am I going to. Because you should, I think we all understand just by looking at the terms, what is impossible and what is impracticable. If something is really impossible for me to deliver, if I break my arm, I can't play piano. But if I just have a little pain in my arm, then I can play under a bit of like unpleasant circumstances. Does anybody have one example to impossibility and impracticability? I'm looking, so it would be great to see also what are your examples or what are your thoughts so that we can look at a few specific examples. So how we can differentiate this. Come on, don't be shy. What is the case of impossibility? I just gave one example, actually. And when is something just impracticable? Hello? Alexandra, where are you? What is sickness? Sickness is impossibility or impracticability? Examples, please. A huge snowstorm. That's amazing. I love that. Yeah, I mean, it can be rather impracticability. I mean, a huge snowstorm, depending on really how the situation is. If you can predict it, for example, for the next day, I mean, it was actually funny. So yeah, thank you, Esther. This is what I want. If I die, my service gets impossible. That's what I like. Sometimes we have to get into this kind of examples. Yes. Violence from a strike. Actually, not the violence, but the strike itself can be an act of a circumstance of impossibility to rage. Yes. Because if the strike, for example, let's say in France or in Italy, those countries are used to strike. If captains are striking, flights are what? Impracticable or impossible? Impossible. So then it means if Vadim wants to go and meet Ivan in Moscow for a business meeting, but then he's stuck in Paris, so Ivan cannot hold him actually liable because he can say there was a strike in Paris, but actually he should also prove it and show it. We will get to this in a minute. That is a circumstance of impossibility. But if the flight is just delayed and you are just a little bit too comfortable to get to that meeting afterwards and pay for a taxi to be there faster, or to I don't know, to book something that you can get a better or quicker room or something, that is just more complex or more expensive. That is not impossible. If the border closes, yes, it is absolutely. That's the perfect. I mean, Esther and Kani, these are perfect examples of impossibility. So it means if your house falls down, it is impossible to live in that house unless you start rebuilding it. But if your house is just a bit cold, it is not impossible to live. It's just a bit uncomfortable to live in it, you know? So deliver goods as closed border. Exactly. Ivan, you're also close to Kani. That's great. Borders. Yeah, borders are actually one of very, very typical clients. And impossibility to see the clients personally. Well, impossibility, you should see why. If you don't know why something is impossible, you can't also prove it, because you can't say, oh, it's a big traffic jam, so it's impossible for me to see you. You could have taken another road. You could have driven a bit earlier. So, these are the things that are not really acts of impossibility. But now my favorite examples were the examples of Esther and Kanye, the death and the closing of borders. We should get a bit radical, because radical things make things impossible. I remember also during the war times, one thing that is happening now, which is interesting here, just it gives me sometimes this flashback. I'm sorry that I'm referring sometimes to wars, but I try to keep my smile. I'm not trying to make you sad, but it is actually a nice example. Those days already, as we were displaced also in different homes and in different places out of our own hometown, the government or the school system, they were also providing different or alternative options for schooling and education. So that was the first time in my life that we were being educated via TV. So there were some lessons that I still remember very well, especially the science of the triangles, how to measure the angles and the legs, etc. So that's why I also have a triangle tattoo, pyramid on my hand. They were the best lessons that we had with great teachers via TV. So for us, it was a total shift. I was even those days thinking of what happened if a rocket or a missile is hitting me and I can't write because I'm a right-handed person. What can I do if I can't manage to write with my right hand? I started in the summer holidays to learn writing also with my left hand. And actually, these days, I can still also write with left. These were the thoughts of a child, which are actually, if you go in, they can be pretty tragic, but the outcomes can make you really to a winner or something that you can say, okay, because of that adverse circumstances, I am grateful now that I can even write with my left hand. So these are the things that it could have been impossible if, as a right-handed person, my arm was cut. So that would have been also an act of or circumstance of impossibility, just to bring this. So for force majeure, important thing is to see, is there a circumstance that makes delivery or performance or fulfillment impossible, or just makes it a bit more complex or expensive? Second one, no, that's not force majeure. So if a dispute or a problem is also going to a negotiation or for a trial, the very first thing that after not predictable and not controllable, that is what we are also looking at, that if the fulfillment is still possible or impossible. We also differentiate between the two levels of the circumstances, whether they are resulted by the act of human or by act of, these days still we're calling it act of God, no matter if people are God believers or non-believers or whatever, but this is still the legal, legal education is very traditional. It's church education actually. So there are still terms that are coming from the old Roman church, etc. So act of God, or vis maior, it is called in Latin, that is something which is resulted or led by God. Just, I think, who was mentioning it, Eric, or somebody was also mentioning here, a heavy storm of snow or earthquake or something. But strike is a typical act of human, okay? But, or a pandemic, this is, what do you think, whose act is the current pandemic now? Because this is very important afterwards to navigate the force majeure and the liabilities and responsibility, who's paying for what. What do you think, guys? The current pandemic, corona crisis, is that an act of God or act of human? I'm very curious because I have my own definition for that. Corona, human, God, or both? Human governments, that's good. I like it. Yes, I agree also with you. Any other opinions? Human. Yes, 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 yes. Absolutely. Unfortunately, human tends to blame God or a superior force for things that he or she doesn't want to take responsibility for. As I think I'm happy that Kanye also said can be both. I mean, one part, when we say it can be both, the part that we can put under act of God, it can be the part that is probably as human, we couldn't have seen it coming. I mean, I'm talking about the majority of humans, because there are those who were probably have been warning us or have been seeing symptoms or stuff that they could have said, this is going to come, watch out. But then on the other hand, those governments or those humans who were not taking it serious or who were not taking the right measures in the right times, they could have contributed to that. That is something that we can still see. To my opinion, Switzerland acted very late. And I think now Kanye is saying Netherlands is still not really taking it serious. And I think Scandinavia also started very late to take it serious until they really saw dead people. And United States, I think they started pretty early, but they did not really go the right way. So I'm not a medical person to really decide who does right or wrong. I'm just saying my personal opinion. But this is how actually I agree with Kanye. It can be interpreted as both, because there is a certain component of the current crisis that was really not navigated or not expected or not controlled by the human. But there was a part that could have been expected or controlled also by human by means of mitigating the losses and the risk. That is actually my favorite area, risk control and risk mitigation. Because I'm a believer, I'm a risk taker. I mean, the entrepreneurs here in the group, who are the business owners, I think the majority. Entrepreneurial life means risk. I mean, we decided to take risk. We decided to be risk takers the moment we decided to launch our own businesses. No matter how long are we in business, whether we are a small business or a multi-million-dollar business, established one, etc. The moment we wake up every morning, we are living at risk. But the other talent comes not to avoid risk or not to ignore risk, but also to learn how to prepare and how to be equipped for the times of risks. And these risks, mostly, my opinion is that it was not really to this extent predictable, but if it were predicted and controlled in the very early stages by also the help and navigation of the human, the governments, of course, is also human, but a majority. If it was navigated in the right way, then we could have seen probably a much smoother circumstance now. But in this case, I put this actually intentionally here, acts of human or acts of God, but in the reality, force majeure or superior force includes or covers also the acts of both. So the combination. This is now, to my opinion, or to Kanye's opinion, or to some of the others say, depending on the decisions, it can be the act of both. So just to see how now in certain countries, I'm putting Swiss law here because it is, first of all, it's very similar to some of the other neighboring countries, but it's as a referral or as a recognized legal system in most of the world. So I want to see how is that for you guys if you have your businesses or your contracts here in Switzerland, or you have a link to Swiss law or to Swiss jurisdiction. So first of all, we have two different doctrines here. And in some of other countries, but I try to put the focus on here, this can be also applied in common law countries. I mean, UK has a very similar approach. One very important point that we have to bear in mind when we are in a crisis like this is, first of all, what is the position of a jurisdiction that we are at or what we are dealing with if we are doing international business? And secondly, because the first position that we said was the position of the contract. When we have contract, we are already one level higher. And when the contract is really not that solid, or we don't have one, or if we come to disputes or issues with our parties, then it is very important to see what is the position of the legal system that we are at, or even if we are in Turkey or if we are in Dubai, but our contracts are including governed by Swiss law, then we are already under the roof or the umbrella of Swiss law, or by Dutch law, whatever. So this is very important to see what are the different decisions that different jurisdictions globally are taking with regards to force majeure. It is very funny, to my opinion, because as I said, I'm a child of crisis, but for a lot of European jurisdictions, force majeure is still not a real clear and applicable term, and also for a lot of European lawyers or legal experts. Why? First of all, because most of them, they have not faced it, especially the younger generation. They have not been through real crisis. There has never been really depressions or recessions or inflations or wars or natural catastrophes here. Not really much, especially I'm talking about Switzerland, Germany, Austria. It is a bit of like pampered countries, which are actually very good places to live. But when it comes to this kind of issues, if you have a background from a countries with crisis, like for example in Europe, Croatia, or maybe Russia or Ukraine, or you have seen some things with fall of the communism, with revolutions, with certain riots, with even periodical wars or natural catastrophes. So you have certain preparations already mentally or by default in your backup, in the back of your mind. But here, this is something that we have to be even more diligent about, because we are sometimes, by our intuition or by our gut feelings, better than the experts here, if we know it already or we have experienced it, because something in our gut feeling is telling us, what if this and that? The moment we are asking what if, it means we're already considering force majeure, whether it's a fraud by the counterpart or is something which is out of our control, out of our prediction, and that's a typical force majeure thing. So for these countries, as I mentioned, if they don't know really the term or they can't really touch it, they leave it somehow open to two different solutions. There is no clear term as force majeure in Swiss legal provisions, but there is one article in the OR, it's called here, the civil code as well, so 119, if I remember it properly, which explains the same circumstances as we just exactly went through, with the impossibility and with the non-predictability, and also with the possibility of no possibility to control. So when these components are already given, then based on Swiss law, the contracting parties or the contracting party who is affected by such circumstances, by law, can he or she be exempted or excused from delivering or from performing or fulfilling the contract. So this is very similar to a lot of other countries, but I'm just putting it into Swiss law, as I said, because we are sitting or we are running this webinar from here. It is very important to understand if you can invoke force majeure or if you can invoke another doctrine, which is called frustration doctrine. So if your jurisdiction does not recognize this, you can still have a good lawyer and who can really invoke frustration for you in front of the private court of arbitration or the public court of law, going into the situation that say the circumstances have changed so drastically that XYZ is just impossible. And then we have to see the party who is affected carries also the burden of proof. This is something that we want to have a look at. So if we are in such a situation, then what is the solution actually? Because talking about the definitions or the circumstances, or it is something, but on the other hand, we're also here to see, okay, we are now in the middle of a crisis, what to do now, or how to prepare for further crisis, because this is not going to be the last time we are facing something like this. The most important thing is, first of all, have a contract. Always have a contract. Always have a contract. Contract. No matter, you're an employee, you're a business owner, have a contract. And if you have a contract, look that you have a force majeure contract clause. And if you have a force majeure contract clause, see that the wordings is so precise as possible. What I luckily have been including always in the contracts of my clients were also global or local epidemic or pandemic I'm very proud of myself. So please let me be a little bit happy that I've been doing it. Because in a lot of these countries, I mean, since when was the last epidemic or pandemic? Can anybody tell me something from your country? Because I want to also look at other regions. Let's say Russia, Netherlands, Iran. When was the last epidemic or pandemic, something that really created a chaos in the industries? Yes, Gorala, I fully agree with you. Prevention goes before the cure. Mitigate the risk before it happens. So give me a few examples. Yes, I think I was a prophet. So from your countries, from your regions, when was the last epidemic? I mean, we have also flu or something, which is something global. Oh, yeah. But that was not an epidemic. That was not a health issue. That was a, let's say, act of God. Is it? Or ice storm? Is it? Ebola. Yeah. That was one of the last. SARS. Absolutely. Come on, give me like two more. Because I just want to understand to see where in your countries or in your regions, how far are they in your memories that the pandemics or epidemics or something? Yes, true, Eric. That was act of God. I mean, let's call it that way. Any one more example of health issues which creates chaos or panic in the industries? Because nothing is actually comparable with what we are experiencing now, because this is very unique. Actually, sometimes I think this is very unique in the history. We're really going through a historical period. Everything is affected, and that's why for me it's a perfect force majeure situation. We can all find solutions how we get paid for our non-deliveries or for our non-performance. So I don't want to be mean, but there is a solution for all of those. Anything else? So in that case, actually, I'm very happy that I've been always including this. I don't know where that really have come from, because yes, Tika, yeah, Vadim, yeah. This was very recent, right? Was that from South America or something? I think this is pretty new. Yeah. But the thing is, they really did not spread in a way that people take them so serious that they think, what if something like this become a global issue and we can't deliver anymore? Because epidemic and pandemic is very, very, very essential for fulfillments. Because at that moment, the health of a nation goes before the swine flu, yes, as well. The health of a nation then will go before the economy of a nation. I remember a few weeks ago, I heard something in Swiss TV, which was really weird, because somebody, that I don't want to mention the name anymore, said, for us at the moment, the economy is very important, because Switzerland has such a vital and vivid and dynamic economy. We can't just shut everything down. That was, I think, like 10 days before they announced the measures. Yes, Vadim, that was from Brazil, absolutely. So this is, I was just thinking how weird this person can think, because if you are not having the healthy workforce, if the human resource is not healthy, what kind of economy, what kind of dynamic and vital economy are you talking about? But then we heard afterwards how Austria actually handled it. I'm really a fan of that guy. We just went into that radical, because he said it's about the health and the lives of our nation. This goes prior to anything else. So here I allow myself to be radical. That is actually when you act to the favor of your country or your nation. Okay, contract. In the contract, force majeure clause, in the force majeure clause, including the right circumstances that may happen. If you're thinking you live in France and you don't include strikes in your force majeure clause, then I really have to pray for your lawyer. If you live in, I don't know, for example, in Syria at the moment, and you do not include in your contract, let's say, war or closure of borders, then I would also pray for the lawyer. And if you are living in Iran or in Ukraine or somewhere and you do not include embargoes or sanctions or acts of governments, then I really have to, I will not pray for lawyers, I will shoot them if they do not include such things in your contract clauses. And choice of law and jurisdiction, it is very, very important. Never rely on the legal systems that you don't know, or you don't, normally none of you as non-lawyer, you don't have to know the laws, but the laws, the legal system that doesn't feel familiar to you, don't go for it. If you're based in Netherlands, stick to Dutch law in your contracts, even if your contracting party is in Vietnam. If you're in Australia, if you're in UK and you are a fan of common law, don't go for other laws. That is what I always tell my client. I just say Swiss legal system is really, really good. It is very favorable. It is very predictable and also stable. But if somebody want to stick to their local legal system, that's their very good right, because they feel comfortable in that jurisdiction as well. If you come to a kind of conflict or a difference between you and your business partner or your client or so, and you have the choice to choose where you want to go for litigation, arbitration, or dispute settlement, definitely your intuition is telling you my office, actually. That's what I actually put for one of my clients who is based in Zug here in Switzerland, just 20 minutes from Zurich. And I said, is that okay for you to put the jurisdictions in your dispute resolution clause, Zurich or Zug? He said, can you just not please mention the address of my office? I want that if something happens one day, that we have it resolved in my office. I feel comfortable here. I would also pay for everything. I would pay also for the arbitration, for the lawyers. I want it to be resolved here. We are human. We feel safe where we are used to, or this, we are creatures of habit. So that's a very, very important psychological component as well. This is now, regardless of force majeure, yes or no, please bear this in mind. This is just a free legal advice for yourself. Be persistent with your choices of law and choices of jurisdiction. Be hard in the negotiations if the other one is not accepting it. Being hard, I don't mean being aggressive, but be persistent, or hire a right advisor to really persist on such choices for you in the contract. And now that it happens, actually, it gets real. People are not getting paid. People are not getting the services. People are canceling the services. Some people, I mean, one of my clients last week, the one who was calling and screaming from Austria, she said, my events are booked already. My clients have already paid, but I can't deliver the events and I can't deliver the consulting sessions, but they have paid and now they're asking for refunds. But thank God in my contract, the rescheduling, cancellation, and refunding policy is in a way that I don't have to pay anything back, but I can't give them the choice of rescheduling. I can tell them, like a lot of other bigger events, if you notice these days, a lot of concerts, a lot of big events, which are a bit higher level or expensive, none of them has announced canceled. Most 99% of them has announced postponed, because most of them, they don't want to pay back unless some people are insisting on it, because they still want to deliver and they still want to keep the clients. They still want to keep the brand and the market. They don't want to lose those people that they have already paid for marketing or so, but they just keep their spaces and say, if this crisis is going to be over in 6 months, we will be delivering the Rolling Stones concert at the same place, at the same time, with the same money, with maybe more services. We will be delivering this and that match for you to be enjoying, but we're not paying back something for canceling. You know, there are certain percentage that they're doing it, but I'm saying the majority. They have, I think, smart consultants, and they know that's the situation of force majeure. And one important component of force majeure is that it doesn't always excuses you from the performance or from delivery. It helps you exempt until the duration of force majeure. So for now, how many months or weeks do you think this situation is going to continue? Because I want to have an estimation of solutions for the negotiation of settlement with regards to fulfillments. I think 3 to 6 months. 3 months is my best case scenario. 6 months is my No, 8 months is my worst case scenario, and 6 months. Esther, I am funny. If I'm not funny, my father always said, if I'm not funny, I would have been dead long time ago, because we've been through so much stuff. So if we don't keep the humor, we will die. At least 4 months. That's very realistic. Yeah. Who else? 3 months, 2 months. Some people, I mean, in Switzerland, they just, I think, extended the duration of the measures until mid-May. So last week it was supposed to be until Easter, but now it's again like 1 month more. I think in the States yesterday I saw Ivanka was announcing it, no, this morning actually, until end of April at least, and asking people to be patient and show understanding. 1 year, I love counting. This is the real worst case, but that is good, because if you think that something is going to take 1 year, you will get the hell of prepared. Because 1 year, it means probably 1 year you cannot sell, you cannot deliver, so you have no choice but being creative unless you have a millionaire father or a millionaire partner or something, but otherwise you have to get prepared and get creative. We have a saying, I think it is international, it's a saying, needs encourage or creates creativity. Yeah, if you are in need, you get creative. You learn to sew, you learn to cook. I mean, these days everybody is a cook, everybody is a baker, everybody's barber at home. I see some really funny things. People are really baking cakes or breads, or people who have never cooked at home, they are now the best cooks. So I think I heard something that after the end of this crisis, we will have a oversupply of cooks and bakers in the market. Yeah. So the letter of the school, Switzerland, school stays closed. Can you tell us until when they gave you the announcement? Because this is very important. Everything is actually also related to the schools. If the schools are closed, it means parents also need to stay home. So they have to be exempted also from performing and work, or they have to be granted home office possibilities. If you can tell us a date. So oh, whoa. Okay. Cutting is getting worse and worse. Okay, let's. I love it. So sometimes it's good to see the worst case, really. Because if you're too optimistic sometimes, then you take it too easy and you think, in 3 weeks it's over, and maybe government is paying us something, and so let's lean back and watch the next movies or so. No. I was told also last week by a few people, hey, calm down, relax, you don't have to do this and that. I said, no, this is the time. This is the time that makes us different than others who are leaning back and watching movies in 3 months or in 1 year or 2 weeks, whenever this crisis is over. So I just asked about these durations because it is very important to see what are the expectations of people, because we just said that this force majeure, one of the components is that it's not to be expected or anticipated. Regardless of what governments are saying, there is something which is the reality. And if we are, we are all smart, mature people, I assume, I don't normally attract otherwise people in my community. So assuming that we can put one and one together and seeing this kind of like ripple effect, which is happening now in the world, in some countries, the pandemic is just arriving. I mean, India is just super, super new, and it's a 1.5 billion nation. This can be really, really harsh. But I see that they are also really acting harsh to control it, so that to try to get it at the minimum, or at least to slow down the peak of the pandemic. That's what also Austria has been doing. But they do not have the real means, so I saw they are using some sticks to hit people. And sometimes you should be radical just to act upon necessity. So important is, once we know, or once we can predict, or once we can start getting used to the duration of the crisis, then we can also understand, okay, what are our possible responsibilities? What are, first of all, from the human understanding of responsibility, and what is the legal side? Because if, for example, my services are delayed to someone, or my food is being delayed as a delivery by a restaurant, then I would ask, or the restaurant must actually call me, or if my Uber is going to arrive late, they should call me and let me know that they are going to be delayed. I'm using very easy daily examples. I don't want to go into really complex supply chains or super like legal trials or so. If something like that is happening, the first responsibility of the affected party, I'm saying, is to inform the other party. If I am stuck in Paris in the strike and I have to go to a meeting to Lausanne, to Vadim, and I can't make it on time, my first responsibility is to call him and tell him, look, it is a situation of impossibility. There's a strike. The flights are not operating. I can't make it to our meeting. Please try to do this and that with the other business partners the way that you can think it can handle it. Or please include me in the meeting via phone or via video or something. So this is very, very important. In the contracts, this must be also stated. Because in the force majeure clause, it is not enough that you just mention in case of, I will just read you from my heart, I know it by heart, what is a kind of typical force majeure clause. You can say, in case of impossibility, in case of a situation or a circumstance which was not predictable and was not couldn't be controlled by the parties or a party of this agreement, such as, now the list goes on, act of God, act of human, both of them, strikes, embargoes, epidemic, pandemics, acts of governments, closure of borders, natural catastrophe or something like this. So the list must be actually not exhaustive, because that's dangerous. If it's exhaustive, it means something which is outside of that list in the contract clause. When it happens, then you can't invoke the force majeure clause. If you do not include sanction and embargoes and suddenly Ukraine or Iran or Saudi, something like this happens, or with the United States, then you have to pay. You have to pay damages, you have to pay penalties, you have to be held liable for something that actually was an act of human, but was not under your area of responsibility and control. So please, this is very important. Look at your force majeure clauses if you have a contract, and if you have a contract clause as force majeure, look at them that they are not exhaustive. Because if they are, then maybe they do not include certain circumstances, and then if they happen, your clause will be useless for that circumstance, okay? That is very important. And once you have those circumstances, the affected party has the responsibility and the obligation to inform the other. So the affected party is responsible to inform the other party in due time or in timely manner, so that the other party can already think about measures or plan accordingly to see how they can minimize their damages, their losses, their risks. Because if Vadim knows that I'm not making it to that meeting, then maybe he will find some strategies how to handle that meeting with the other parties. But if I don't tell him on time, or I don't tell him at all, the meeting can be screwed, the business can be screwed, and then, of course, I should be the person to be held liable, and I should be the person also responsible for the damages which can be caused out of the irresponsible action from my side. Please keep this in mind. It's very important. It's not only the circumstance of force majeure, which is important to have in the contract. It is also to define the responsibility of the parties. Who is responsible to do what time, how. Even it is very important to mention how the people are going to contact each other. If I tell Vadim, I just sent you an SMS and I know he never checked his SMS, or he's somewhere, he has no phone connection or something like that, or internet connection, then that was a lame excuse or a lame action from my side. This is very important. So these were the times that you have a contract. If you don't have a contract, I pray for you that you should be lucky that you're in a very favorable legal system that recognizes force majeure also in the law or in the non-written law. Because as I said, even in the Swiss law, it is not clearly codified as force majeure. It is an article, a provision with the title of objective impossibility. Because that's also very important that we have to quickly maybe look at. the difference between the two impossibilities. We have subjective impossibilities, which is in the responsibility of human, and we have objective impossibility, which is what was that ice storm that Eric mentioned, or something which makes you impossible to drive, to move forward, to deliver, or the strike, for example. So this is very, very, very important. If you don't have a contract, at least, as I said, I pray for you that you're in a good jurisdiction with a good legal system. And if the contract is lacking the force majeure clause, there is still a solution of amendment, renegotiation. That is actually what is happening at the moment worldwide. And I'm being bombed also by messages or calls from non-clients or clients or people. Hey, we have a contract, but the terms are not clear enough. And we are now getting into a discussion or little dispute now with the party other side. How can we save ourselves? Then the best solution is that I tell them it is time to look at the amendment or addendum for the contract to see how can we still work on those contracts, that they are still valid, in force, but they can still serve the purpose, okay? Once you get into trouble, if you start litigating, then I even don't pray for you, because you lost the game already. You lost the money, you lost the time, you lost the brand, you lost the relationship, you lost the reputation, you lost health, everything. Don't litigate unless there is nothing else possible, or unless there is a circumstance of impossibility, okay? Do not litigate. Unless really there is an impossibility that you don't find arbitration, you have no arbitration clause in your contract, etc. Even if you don't have it, there is still possibility to negotiate and agree upon settling outside of the public courtrooms, okay? So the best solution, as I also just mentioned a few seconds ago, reach out to your contracting or to your business party, if you don't have a contract, that I'm not saying contracting party all the time, or to your employee or so, or to your tenants. Reach out to them and try to negotiate. If you are not a good negotiator, if you don't know the options, hire me. No, I'm joking. Hire an expert. Hire an expert who is not a litigator or a fighter lawyer, but a warrior lawyer who fights for the interests of the clients and not just to win a game and ruin another party. Okay, this is extremely important. When it's, sorry, I just put I think I went to the previous. Okay, so this is very important to first reach out to the other part and find solution. Whenever there's a problem, there's also a solution. This is how you can look at problems, actually. This is how I also look at problems. Because if you don't know where is the damage, how can you find the cure and how can you fix it? That's very important. So the first thing is get in touch. I had also calls during the past days with issues with employment or with tenants, payments, penalties. But the best advice that I could tell them said, are you a good communicator or negotiator? First, you should. If not, let me talk to them or let me write a letter to them in your name and seek communication. Because that is that's the best solution. As I said, at the moment, the courts are closed. I think until 4th of April or something. I have to double check the dates. Maybe they will open soon or they don't. So even if it goes to summer, there are summer holidays for courts, so no trial will take place. Or maybe they give you an appointment for whatever. And as Kani said, maybe this crisis continues for 1.5 years. So what kind of court trial are you going to go? Don't. That's why I wrote really the not. Do not litigate. Do not shoot for litigation. Try to get your lawyer or talk yourself to your other party and sit down with your contracts, if you have, hopefully. Otherwise, I will draft something for you. Just reach out to me. Don't be shy. And then sit down with them. And you can't actually sit down with them. I'm just saying it physically, but reach out to them, sit down virtually or have a video call, have a webinar, whatever. Try to settle. There's always a solution. At the moment, also, there's a high tolerance, especially also from the governments with regards to the investors, with regards to tenants, with regards to employers, with regards to banks, that they are somehow injecting I saw a lot of bigger numbers. What my last information was 5 billion for Switzerland for the first 3 months. And I think I heard also from Dubai, 10 billion for the first 3 months. I heard the same amount from Austria as well, so that the governments are preparing packages, especially for smaller businesses, or for those businesses that are really, really, really in the worst. I mean, like tourism, like bars, restaurants, like hairdressers, beauty salons. It's closed, finished. Even if they open, they have no clients. We can still do our services via phone, via I mean, we can still do trainings like this. We can deliver each other services, but that's a different constellation. For those who can't do it, then let me, I think, what is that? If you're showing the slides, can you share? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry if you can't see it, but I do not put actually a lot of information on the slide so that it does not really distract you with reading all the time, so that you can still listen and benefit. I did not really put too much information on them, but absolutely, that's no problem. I can even, what I would love to provide for you who arranged today and put the time into this, I would love to give you something as a little thank you, with like a short one-pager handout with the force majeure and with a quick summary of the points that we discussed today, so that you can still have it in your, as your Bible in your pocket these days instead of your credit card, because force majeure is now the credit card for this crisis. I kind of said it's going to last for 1.5 years. So I'm going to provide you something, and I would be more than happy to send to all the people who were today in the session. And let me see if you have any questions. Shoot them out. Hello. I think you can see me now better, but I don't. Okay, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer as far as I can, of course, because the topic is still very fresh. It is very new here, especially with the issue that Vadim also mentioned at the very beginning. That's a very complex issue, the process. There are certain forms actually already issued to fill out and to submit to SVA. I don't know how you call it, SVA here, the social, not social organization, that's German, the social insurance authority here. There are certain forms on their website that they have issued already that small business owners, employees, etc., they can fill out and they can submit it to the social insurance authority, and that they will then consider the case and contemplate and see how whether the person is entitled, and if yes, for how much and for how long, and how these payments are going to being rendered, etc. This is a very complex process, and actually with that we need to be very patient. If somebody amongst you or us is going to apply for something like that, it's going to take time. Because most of the countries have already considered and issued budget, but it is also formality and it takes some time. So it's not going to happen like, say, okay, next month you're going to get this amount, or for this amount of time or so. And I saw, Valerie also provided us some great information with the schooling system. That's very important, actually, because it has direct impact on the parents as well. So please shoot out your questions. I am also very happy to provide to this group that joined me today an assessment of your contracts, if you have some, or a session at no cost, and give you consulting on what contracts you may need now for your business to protect you or to provide you the right security during the times of crisis. Because some others that they have specific business areas. I think Valerie, tell me if you are Henrik's wife. If that's you, you are in food industry and also in the tech industry. And these industries are very much actually affected by the current crisis, because the delivering and of the food, especially, not maybe for yourself as the tech party, but for those who have to make and prepare and deliver, they have an issue. especially with the hygienic measures. Okay, so good. Thank you for the confirmation. Maybe just amongst us, that is also one of the reasons that I wanted to have a short conversation with Hendrik once more, because it is very important to see how the contracts shall be finalized based on the times that we are at now. Because otherwise, like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, the situation was totally different here and also in the whole world. But now, especially if you're working internationally, this is going to be a kind of precedent case. So I said one thing that I'm going to offer to this group is the handout. I'm going to provide you a one-pager after this with the notes of the force majeure, the definition, what is to be considered and what is needed, and a few takeaway bullet point solutions. Quick and short, your Bible for the next 1.5 years. And of course, I can submit to you also a replay. I hope this has worked because, as I said, this is my first webinar today. I think it has been recorded, so I will submit it to you as well. Plus, I'd be very happy to support you with a first assessment session of looking at your contracts, and if you don't have contracts, to provide you something. The Bible is coming, Esther. Yeah, I told my sister told me I'm a prophet, or I'm a what was that, predictor, because I said I included all this pandemic and epidemic in the force majeure clauses, but now I'm giving you Bible as well. So here we are creating a new religion of the force majeure. One thing that I wanted to tell you as the last, it is very important. Some people or some lawyers or some traditional people here are trying to tell that, yeah, force majeure, no, it doesn't apply, it doesn't exist or something. Do not, as Arnold Schwarzenegger said, do not listen to naysayers. Use your own brain, consult your trusted lawyer. It shouldn't be always me. Maybe you like someone else or you have someone else, absolutely fine. Consult the right person and then seek proper advice, because this situation, this circumstance are going to continue for a while. For best case is 2-3 months, most likely cases maybe 5 months, 6 months, worst case can be till the end of the year or maybe another year. So please be equipped and be well prepared. If you do not have contracts, please let me give you some. If you have, please let me review them for you or give them to someone else that you love to review for you. And besides, I'm going to, I think I'm liking webinars. I hope you like it as well. Although this was my first experience, I hope you can have some tolerance and understanding if I was not really at my best version today as the first experience. I was very worried about the tech stuff, or if slides will work, if suddenly my internet goes down or anything. But I'm going to create a series of webinars with trainings on 3 most really major areas of business risks, going deep dives into different types of business contracts, plus risk areas, especially with business structures, and also preventing, predicting, and mitigating those risks, the techniques of negotiating certain clauses with regards to liability, with regards to competition, with regards to force majeure, of course, with regards to confidentiality, circumvention, especially fraud and breaches of contracts. Plus, on one session, I would love to deep dive into alternative dispute resolution methods, which is out of court settlements and agreements, which saves actually money, energy, reputation, relationships, and everything. If you dissolve amicably with someone, or if you restart your relationship with respect with someone, this is a different constellation that you go and ruin each other in front of a court of law. And at the end of the day, the winners of such processes actually are the litigation attorneys that are very well paid, but not the parties and not even the judge. So these are the 3 series of webinars that I would create very soon, and I think I can offer them to you next week. For these 15 people who attended this session, I have your names all. Normally, I would offer something like this for 400 or something. But for these people who are here in this session, if you're interested, I would love to offer it to you, the 3 webinars, which will be like all in all 6 hours of full content and of course Q&A afterwards, like today, I would love to offer it to you people for 97 francs, which is not even compensation for my 10 minutes, but I just don't want to do it for free, to be honest, because I want a little bit of commitment so that when you are there, then you come. This is very important for me. And of course, I may also invite other people to attend, but definitely not with this price. So if you are interested, you can just type yes, because I'm not just going to offer you by force. Just you can type me here yes, and I will afterwards provide you a personal email and then send you the link to the series of the webinars for that price. And for those who want to decide tomorrow or afterwards, then I will make it for 200 or something. It's still very reasonable, but for those who are here and who decide now and let me know, then I will provide it for you with 97 francs. Which is, these days we are not going out for dinners or drinks, etc. So these monies are actually very well spent, I think, for something like that. And as I said, in the 3 sessions, I will really deep dive into the essential contracts for, I'm writing the names actually. Nice, the people with K, they start with Kani and Catherine. I'm writing the names if you allow me, because I don't trust the technique actually. Catherine, sorry, just a few seconds. And then, as I said, I go into a few essential contracts which are necessary and significant for business owners. And then we go into also the liability issues of each part of the contracts, and then the right ones for your business. Because maybe I don't want to talk about 10 contracts for you if your business needs only 2 or 3. That is very important, because my system is not to give people what they ask for or what they want. I give them what they need. This is very important. And then in the second session, I would love to go into, as I said, certain clauses which are essential for those. Valerie, welcome. So you're with Henrik, actually. You're 2. That's cool. You both. I still keep my fingers crossed. You remember my pictures on Facebook? So for you, it's a partner prize anyway. So you both can take part. And if you are really willing to, until the end of the session, which will be another few minutes, you can type me yes, and I'll be more than happy to include you in those golden circle. And if you decide tomorrow or something, I'm still happy to invite you in the circle. But as you know, it is not. I will offer it then for 200. And for those who decide later in other circles, then I charge them whatever I want. That's my authority, my autonomy. Okay, I'm very happy to answer a few more questions. If I can, please shoot them out. Before the crisis is over, okay? Thank you, Turaj. Thank you. You're excellent as well. I really appreciate your attendance. I mean, he joined us from Iran, right? The country of constant crisis. That's my CCC combination. That makes us actually badass people, actually, and we don't shy away. These days, actually, how are you doing, actually, these days, before I get your questions? Are you mentally also in good shape? Because this session is not about yoga and well-being. It's legal well-being. I'm talking about the shitty side of business, you know, the problems. But how are you really doing? I'm not really doing bad. I think I have seen worse. The role of the insurance companies, very good point. No, yeah, of course you can involve them, because force majeure, they can be also covered. Sorry, I misunderstood the question. Yeah. The gods, that was good. How many gods? The act of God or gods. I love this. It's the freedom of religion. Okay. Let me give you the answer. Yes, of course, force majeures are also recognized and acknowledged by insurances, by insurance companies, because if there are like acts of impossibility, let's say my service is because of any reason, I am not able to deliver you, for example, this session, and you paid for it or something. Let's use this as a as an example. So the insurance company will look at it. First of all, you should look at their policies, because you have definitely also a contract, a terms and condition that you have signed with the policy of that insurance. There are those small gray written printed one, these are the worst things, the terms and conditions. It's very dangerous. Look at those things diligently. Normally they have force majeure clauses. Maybe they write it in a different language or with different terms than force majeure. But at the end of the day, you will see if because of XYZ, the client or the insured person or the insured company is not able to deliver or perform or blah, 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 then the insurance is going to take over this. It depends on what kind of insurance and what is what is your contract? What did you sign, or what did you agree with because there are also different insurance ceilings and tiers. Depending on the contract that you have, yes, they may be covered, and depending on the contract, the amount can be different. For example, for businesses like me, which are high risk because of consultancy and advice, if somebody don't like my advice and something happened to him, then the insurance, the contract that I have, they may cover the damages or problems that it happened to my client until 5 million or something. So depending on the risk of your business, you should have specific insurance contracts. And based on that contract, the tier is different. Susan, what's Susan? Which Susan are you? Can you tell me? Susanna. Raimondi? The language of the contract, beautiful. I always recommend my clients to choose English. And not only for the contract, but also for disputes or conflict that may arise out of the contracts. If you are doing international business, unless you're doing international business with somebody in Australia, but that's also a German-speaking person or company, and you are also German-speaking person or company, and you say, let us agree upon international contracts in German, and the dispute resolution language shall be also in German, because maybe that's your mother tongue and you feel more comfortable with that. So it is very arbitrary. My first recommendation is always for international clients is English, even if both sides are speaking the same language, but they are in different jurisdictions, because at the end of the day, if they hire a court of arbitration or mediators or a conciliator for their dispute settlement, that person may interpret that language differently, or maybe the interpretation, that translation cannot be done exactly the way which was stated in the contract and what you signed initially. That's very important, because sometimes some very smooth terms can define a destiny of a contract or a dispute in total different directions. Very careful. So my first recommendation is English, and if you have it in your own preferred language, in other language, absolutely no problem. But then be careful that one day, if there's a conflict, or if it is also in the contract, that the language of dispute resolution is also the same language. If you have a contract in German, then also it should be in the dispute resolution clause. This is what we go through also in the third session of my webinars, which we're talking about dispute resolution, legal aspects of it, about the language and the jurisdictions, and see how those language agreements shall be also kept throughout the hearings, throughout the witness, the evidence proof, the mediation, on different tiers of dispute resolution, because it can start with a negotiation between the both parties. If they don't succeed, then they hire a mediator. Doesn't succeed, then they hire an arbitrator or a court of arbitration consisting of a few, and then with the binding effect, and then the languages of all those sessions must be the same. Because otherwise, if you hire a Japanese-speaking lawyer for a contract which was initially drafted in German, and the both parties are German-speaking, no. This is a very good question. So Number one, English, if you're doing international business. And if you're not doing international business, use your local language, not only for contract, but also for the disputes arising out of that contract. Okay? Esther, thank you, dear Evan. Thank you. It's been also a pleasure seeing you. Not seeing you, but at least reading you. Susan, the art historian and the personal. Got it. We are connected on Facebook, I think. Yeah. Thank you for letting me know. In Netherlands, Kani said that the law recognized the contract in Dutch mainly. Yes, the law. It is not right that you say the law. That's the court. In Switzerland, also now in the German-speaking part, the official language of the courts in the German-speaking part is German. So if you present them a contract in French, they will ask for a translation, for an official translation. Because I am also, since years, a certified court interpreter and translator in Switzerland. I'm very familiar with those kind of language issues in the court systems. That's why I'm saying do not litigate. The public courts are very traditional, are very outdated, honestly. They are not creative, they're not innovative, and they are not expert in certain areas. If you have a technical dispute, if you have, let's say, a pharma, a real estate dispute, you can't really find a very good outcome with public courts because they are all-rounders. The main part is for them the Handelsgericht, which is the commercial and labor and family law, etc. But inside the commercial laws, they are not expert judges for specific areas of business. If you do commodities, if you do consulting business, then it's not good. So be careful. Yes, with the language, it's important. The local courts recognize normally the local language at first. If not, they ask you for a certified official translation of the document, and then they will look at it. Ooh, notarizing of the contract, it's actually not very important unless you still have a lack of, I don't want to use trust because this word is these days becoming very dangerous. The contracts which are being notarized, it is giving a recognition of the signature of the person, because the notary is not approving anything else but the person who is going there, and they say, we are here to certify and notarize that the person who was here was the signing person, signed in front of us. That's normally the main function of notary offices. And for other stuff that they write, like for commercial registry of companies or for testaments, for will, for example, some notaries are also doing that. They notarize it to say this is an original copy, or this is an original version, or this is an original signature. This is the function of notary. So if you want something to be certified and notarized, that was the signature, that was the original copy, then yes, that's notary. Ron, Eric, Ron. Thank you too, if you can still hear me. It was a private message, but I thank you very much for being here. Valerie, when we have partnered, then it's a good idea to make the contract notarized or not. This is, I think I gave the answer. Let me know if I could answer your question already with the comment that I made for Kani's question. If not, let me know what else do you want to know. Please, I'm looking to see if there is any other question here. Thank you, Lucas. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Eric. And Lucas, is that, I don't know, it's a question or not. They work in the home office. I don't get a judgment by the judge of the they work. Yeah, that's what I told you. The problems to send out the judgment of the courts, because at the moment also courts, I mean, they're also human. We can't say other people should keep social distancing, but judges should just work and talk to people. I mean, also in prisons, we have some issues. I think in some countries, including one city in Iran, there were like a prison break. That some people, maybe Kani knows about that. It's the city that we know, that some people fled out of the prisons because the measures cannot be really kept in prisons. You know, to do social distancing, can't put everybody in one single cell. And yes, Lucas, that's also the issue with the courts. A marriage contract. If I have, I mean, I had it in my previous marriage, and it was a very stupid act of my. I don't want to mention anything, but if you have it, I don't normally, because family law is not my expertise. I can refer you to someone, but I do rather business contracts. But for marriage contracts, be careful, read them properly, and understand the legal language, because I talk from my own experience. I signed the marriage contract as I was very new to Switzerland, and it was written by a notary office in German. And I understood just German, like, super elementary stuff. And I did not really understand what I signed until I started here to study law. And then I think I was in my second year. And as we had family law sessions, then I looked at that paper, and don't ask me what I saw. So it made me just to leave that marriage afterwards, not with 0, but with minus. But be careful what you're signing. Valerie, yes, you wrote what I was talking. Okay, thank you for confirming. And thank you too, Lucas. So guys, let me know if there is any other question. Otherwise, we are perfectly on time. If you're okay to finish it, and just give me a confirmation of the people who wanted to be with the 3 sessions of the webinars. Lucas, Kani, Catherine, Valeria, and Hendrik. Am I correct? If there's anybody else, or if I don't get anything until 5 seconds, because everything I receive with a few seconds delay, I learned it from the webinar. If not, then I'm happy just to afterwards submit to you the 1-pager summary, and I think you will receive the loop replay as well. And then the link to the registration for the 3 webinar sessions with your gifted prizes. Okay, guys, so I see that there's no additional questions coming up. I am very happy that you guys were here. It was a beautiful round, engaged, active, and most of you are still to this last second here. A few of you had to go and you just apologize, no problem. I saw you were writing me also on my phone. I got so many, a few, I think 4 of you who had to leave a bit earlier who were writing me. And I appreciate your presence, your time, your engagement, and to give me the motivation to continue with this, because I'm never going to stop with this regardless of crisis. And I love to provide value, and I love to provide you also whatever that it takes to help you survive and get out of this crisis. We're all in the same boat. I'm also small business owners. We're all facing the same risks. So it is time to help each other and to support each other with whatever we can, even with my Bruce Lee t-shirt that I'm in the fighting mode of be water, my friend. So I tried to do a little bit nice, but I thought, everybody's at home. So I kept my t-shirt, and hopefully you guys are also listening to this in your pajamas or in your leisure mode, anything. And Valerie, I understand you. I can say that throughout our times, as we were kids during the war at home, so our parents didn't have it easy until the TV schooling came, and that was very good. So I pray also that in Switzerland this online education is finally kicking in. I am the non-technological person, and I hated to start this. Like my coach has been telling me now for 8 months, and this webinar gem I purchased actually last year, and I paid, and this is now the first time I'm using it. But these are the good sides of a crisis. So let's see the positive things, guys, ladies, gentlemen, Marta, Susan, Caroline, Lucas, Connie, Valerie, Eric, Esther, Vadim, Ivan, Golare, I love you, and I thank you so much for your presence, and this was a big support for me. And I hope to see you again soon. Those of you who are with me, then I will send you the link for next week, and we will see us soon. And the other ones, they can either register later, or I will meet them in another format. Thank you so much. So I say goodbye, and I wish you a beautiful evening, all of you. A lot of patience with the kids. a lot of preparation for new ideas, that we all come out of this crisis as winners. You know, my name is a win, so I'm not messing up with this. We all have to win. And please let me know if you have any questions, any concerns, if you need any tips and sessions or consulting with regards to contracts. If you don't have, still I'm happy to help you. And see you on the other side. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.